Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, instead of, trying to pin down definitive answers, we're leaning into this idea the author we're looking at mentions elsewhere that sometimes, well, there are just more questions than answers.
Right. Acknowledging the complexity.
Exactly. So think of this more as a focused chat, an exploration, really, of a vital concept from one section of their book.
And that section is represent and respect, a really core idea.
It is. And the message is, well, pretty direct. When you're on a team, you're not just you anymore. You're part of something bigger, and you have to represent that team.
You're accountable.
Okay, so let's dive into that core challenge the author sets up. It sort of boils down to some pretty direct questions, doesn't it?
It does. Like, how much does a player's behavior, how they dress, even the language they use, how much does that actually reflect on the whole team?
It seems simple, maybe, but the author suggests the impact, the ripple effect, is pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. So our goal here, our mission for this chat, is really to explore the insights, the suggestions, and yeah, those tricky questions this section brings up about representing the team well.
Understanding the principles, but also maybe grappling with how they play out, in the real world.
Exactly.
So let's unpack that core idea the author emphasizes. Being a team member isn't just about your skills or practice time. It means you are fundamentally accountable to the team itself.
You've shifted from being purely an individual.
And what's critical, according to the author, is that this accountability isn't just for game time, right?
No, not at all. They make a strong point that a player's actions during both team activities, practice, travel, whatever, and maybe surprisingly, even during non-team activities, can reflect, positively or negatively.
Wow, so it suggests that responsibility is pretty constant during the season.
It seems so. It really drives home that idea that players have to grasp they're part of a group with common goals.
And the text emphasizes that together, as a unit, a team can achieve way more than just a collection of talented individuals ever could.
Definitely. And fostering that understanding, that group first, thinking, well, that's a huge role the author gives to the coach.
They're not just teaching the game plan.
No, they're cultivating this sense of collective identity and responsibility, and crucially, leading by example themselves.
Okay, let's look at the specifics then. How does the author say players represent the team? They mention behavior, dress, and language. Let's start with dress.
Right. The idea here seems to be about visible unity. It's not just looking professional. It's a deliberate signal of commitment to this team.
So coaches and players are expected to have a unified look for team stuff.
Yeah. And the author gives some really concrete examples, almost down to the small details.
Like what?
Well, it's taking out jewelry, excessive makeup for practice or games, managing hair so it doesn't get in the way of playing.
Practical stuff.
Yeah, and they acknowledge the challenges, Sometimes gender dynamics come into play, or just navigating fads like certain hairstyles for boys that might be popular but not practical for the sport.
And specific rules.
The text mentions things like no ball caps during volleyball. Maybe it blocks vision or just isn't the right look, and this is a big one, no clothing from competing clubs.
Ah, okay, that makes immediate sense. You're showing where your loyalty is.
Yeah.
Visually.
Exactly. And the author's practical tip, just have a clear do and do not wear chat early in the season. Lay out the expectations.
Simple communication up front. Seems smart.
Yeah. So moving beyond just appearance, the author talks quite a bit about behavior, how actions reflect on the team.
Okay.
And one example they use, which is quite interesting, is music choice during team time, like on the bus or in the locker room.
How so? Music reflecting on the team.
Well, they argue the content of the music says something about the team's vibe, their attitude. They specifically use the example of rap music with swearing or lyrics disrespectful to women.
Right, and we should be clear. They're using that as an example of how certain content could be seen negatively, not judging the music genre itself.
Precisely. Just reporting the author's example. And their suggestion for managing it is maybe having warm-up captains make playlists, but the coach gets a preview?
Gives players some input, but keeps it appropriate.
Okay.
What other behaviors?
Another big one is how new players are treated.
Ah, the whole rookie situation.
Yeah. The author is really firm on this. Things like hazing, any kind of intimidation or exclusion, or just generally treating newcomers differently. That's seen as a direct challenge to the coach's authority and, well, team unity itself.
Undermines the whole team concept.
Totally. They have this great line, there are no rookies, there are just teammates. The text really pushes that. When you are a team, all players must treat the rest of the team with respect.
So those labels, rookie or whatever nicknames, can actually be harmful?
They can be divisive, yeah. It works against that idea that everyone's an equal member. And it connects to that idea that a team is only as strong as its, quote, weakest link.
Right, so stronger players shouldn't look down on others.
No, the author suggests they have a responsibility to help build them up. It's about lifting the whole group.
Makes sense.
And the text gives a really nice anecdote about a team that basically gained an advantage just by how they carried themselves.
How they presented themselves.
Yeah, they stuck together, wore their team gear with pride. They watched opponents together, planned together, ate together. They didn't just drift off with friends or family or get lost on their phones.
That visible unity, that focus, the author suggests that can actually be intimidating.
Yeah, it projects this image of discipline, of seriousness. It shows they're a real unit, even before the game starts.
Which kind of leads naturally into the third area, language.
Exactly. And the author's pretty specific here, too, about what's okay and what's not. Trash talk under the net, big no-no.
And that's a broad category, right? It includes challenging the refs.
Bragging, being a sore loser, all of that, the author argues, reflects badly on the whole team's character.
So treat opponents respectfully.
Yep, just as opponents. Focus on playing, not arguing across the net. And handling officials is another key piece.
What's the rule there?
Players should never challenge linespeople, scorekeepers, refs during the game. That's the bottom line. The player's job is to play.
So who talks to the ref if needed?
The captain. And ideally, only with the coach is okay. It keeps things orderly, respects the game's structure.
Got it. Anything else on language?
Well, it extends to just general communication during team time, like cell phone use.
The phone issue.
Yeah. The author thinks it's generally not a good idea during team meals, practices, games, even designated study times. Why? Because it splits the team back into individuals.
It breaks that unity again.
Exactly. So coaches need to be really clear about when phones are okay and when they're not.
It all keeps coming back to that unified group idea, doesn't it?
It really does. And this connects representation directly to sportsmanship and respect.
Yeah.
Broader concepts.
The author seems to think sport is a really powerful teacher for these things.
Makes a strong case for it. Maybe the best way to teach respect and sportsmanship.
And they list a whole bunch of specific actions that show respect in this context. We probably don't need to list every single one, but there are clear themes, aren't there?
Definitely. Things like respecting authority figures, waving to parents, shaking officials' hands, not challenging refs, making eye contact with coaches, not talking when they talk, that kind of thing.
And commitment to the team effort.
Yeah, being on time, prepared, buying into team building, always giving your best effort, focusing during drills, being physically ready, using your voice positively, showing up even when injured, attending everything.
And personal responsibility too, right? Avoiding stuff that hurts the team.
Absolutely. Like avoiding gossip or negative comments that just eats away at trust, sacrificing maybe individual glory for the team, and steering clear of harmful stuff like smoking, drinking, drugs.
It's really a whole blueprint for a positive team culture.
It is. And they touch on defining a positive versus negative attitude boils down to your dedication to how you choose to think.
And there's that classic coaching saying they include.
Oh, yeah. Ability is what you can do. Motivation is what you will do. Attitude determines how well you'll do it.
Simple but effective. Sums it up nicely.
And the author keeps circling back to communication. That's the coach's main tool, isn't it? To help players understand this blueprint, what's respectful, what's not, within their team.
Because it's not always obvious. It often needs to be taught.
Explicitly taught and reinforced.
And this feels like where we circle back to that initial idea, that the author have more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Because trying to actually do all this, implement these principles,
Yeah.
it brings up real challenges.
Oh, definitely. The section doesn't shy away from that. It makes you wonder, how does a coach effectively instill this deep sense of accountability in young players today? Especially, as the author puts it, in the internet brat age.
Or maybe the focus is so much on the individual. Feels like a tough job.
It does. Or those practical clashes. How do you handle it when individual expression, dress, hair, music genuinely clashes with team expectations? Where's the line?
That's a tricky one. And what about teaching players to represent positively when they see negative stuff all around? From opponents, fans, sometimes even parents.
Yeah, how do you counter that? And it makes you think about the coach's own role. How does their behavior, how they dress, speak, interact with officials, how does that reinforce or maybe even undermine the message they're trying to send?
That's huge. If the coach isn't walking the walk,
Right. The text mentions clear communication, setting expectations early, like that do and don't wear chat. But how do you keep that alive all season, beyond just one talk?
Good question. And managing player voices on the court, encouraging the good stuff like calling the ball, cheering, but stopping it from becoming negative or complaining, or players trying to coach each other, especially younger ones.
That can get messy. And it brings up another point from the text, the challenge with parents. What happens when parents seem to undermine the coach, focusing only on their kids' stats instead of the team?
How does that impact teaching team representation? These are definitely layered issues.
They really are. But importantly, alongside raising these questions, the section does offer those practical coaching strategies we touched on.
Right, the coach is the example.
Explicit communication, clear rules on phones and language, tackling hazing head on, using roles like warm up captains for music.
And other tools mentioned elsewhere in the source, like study halls or player journals, those probably fit in here too, reinforcing that individual responsibility that serves the team.
Yeah, absolutely. These aren't just abstract ideas. The author suggests concrete actions coaches can take.
Okay, so wrapping up our chat on represent and respect, the key takeaways feel pretty clear. Representing your team is vital, not optional. Individual actions really do impact the group, and fostering respect and sportsmanship is just fundamental.
It loops back nicely to that bigger theme in the source about earning things, doesn't it? Earning your spot, earning the experience, earning the right to wear the jersey through effort. Representing the team well is a huge part of that earning process.
And the author ends this line of thought with something that goes way beyond just sports. They reflect that, long after the physical skills fade.
What remains is all the other great things athletes learn: how to lose, how to learn from failure, how to win gracefully, how to respect yourself and others, are all things taught effectively through sports.
That's powerful. Makes you think.
It really does. Think about it. Trying hard to represent your team well, holding yourself accountable, showing respect, that's not just about game rules. It's practice for life, isn't it? You're learning these incredibly valuable lessons about character, about how to interact with others that stick with you.
So how does committing to representing something bigger than yourself actually help you internalize those lessons for life beyond the game?
That's definitely a question worth chewing on.